Back in 1966, Truman Capote published a book that didn't just break the rules, it created a whole new game. It was called In Cold Blood, and it wasn't quite journalism, and it wasn't quite a novel, it was something else entirely. It took a true story and gave it the soul, the depth of great fiction. Today, we're diving into this landmark book through the eyes of one man, the investigator who became its unexpected moral compass.
You can pretty much thank this book for every true crime story you've ever binged. It's the blueprint. But what made Capote's work so different is that he wasn't just interested in the whodunit. He wanted to explore the shockwaves. How one single, violent act could ripple out and shatter the heart of an entire community.
So the story kicks off with the brutal murder of the Clutter family in 1959. This happened in a small, quiet farming town, Holcomb, Kansas. The Clutters were well-known, well-respected, the kind of family that represented the American dream. And their murder, which had no obvious motive, didn't just end 4 lives. It completely destroyed the town's feeling of safety.
The crime scene was a puzzle, the killers had vanished, and the whole town was gripped by fear. So the massive weight of this investigation fell on one man, an investigator from the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. His name was Alvin Dewey, and he would become the true soul of Capote's masterpiece.
So, let's meet him. This is Alvin Dewey. In Capote's telling, he's so much more than just the lead detective. He's this figure of incredible integrity and quiet strength, the steady hand trying to bring some kind of order to the chaos that had just consumed his community.
What makes Dewey so compelling is that he was really a man of two worlds. On one hand, he was a total pro, a force to be reckoned with, a former FBI agent, now a top KBI investigator. Someone once called him the most famous Kansas lawman since Wyatt Earp. But at home, he was a devoted family man, a husband and a father, the kind of guy who helped his wife with the dishes. And this case, it wasn't just a job, it was deeply personal. He was a good friend of Herb Clutter, the father of the murdered family. And that personal connection, well, it made this case incredibly tough for Dewey. He wasn't just solving a crime, he was fighting for justice for his friends. And from the very beginning, the case just seemed completely and utterly unsolvable.
Capote's words just paint a chilling picture, don't they? In a town where people literally didn't lock their doors, this kind of violence felt like an invasion from another planet. And that phrase, 6 human lives, he's talking about the 4 Clutters, but also the 2 killers, whose own paths would end because of what they did that night. And Dewey was the one left to sort through the wreckage.
I mean, just look at what Dewey was up against. The crime scene gave them practically nothing. No murder weapon, no obvious motive, nothing of real value was even taken. The killers used everyday stuff like cords and tape that you just couldn't trace. And fingerprints? There were so many prints all over the house from friends and neighbors that they were basically useless. Dewey was staring at a total dead end.
But Dewey just couldn't let it go. This quote right here, it really shows you how deep his commitment ran. The case became a complete obsession, and it was fueled by that personal connection to the family. He wasn't just an officer doing his job, he was a friend, haunted by this horrible mystery, and he was going to find the answers no matter what.
Okay, so you're faced with an impossible case, but you're driven by this intense personal determination. What do? Well, Dewey did the only thing he could. He got to work. He started a relentless, methodical investigation, dead set on turning over every single stone.
And the scale of this investigation was just immense. Dewey and his team went through over 700 different pieces of evidence. Think about that. They were literally searching for a needle in a haystack, and that haystack stretched across Kansas and far beyond.
All that painstaking work, it finally paid off. After conducting more than 200 interviews, Dewey's team got the break they've been desperately hoping for. An inmate, a guy named Floyd Wells, heard about the murders while he was in prison, and he remembered his old cellmate, Richard Hickock, bragging about a safe packed with cash at the Clutter farm. That one tip, that was it. It led Dewey right to Hickock and his partner, Perry Smith. The hunt was finally over.
But arresting the killers wasn't the end of the story. Not for Alvin Dewey, and definitely not for Capote's book. Actually, this is where the most fascinating, most complex part of his journey really begins. It's this deep internal struggle between his duty as a lawman and his own capacity for human empathy. For Dewey, getting justice for his friends, the Clutters, was non-negotiable. He'd seen the horrific crime scene. He'd comforted the surviving family. He believed without a single doubt that the killers deserved the ultimate punishment for what they did. On that point, there was zero ambiguity. And yet,
As Dewey got to know one of the killers, Perry Smith, something else started to surface. When he learned about Smith's tragic, violent, and completely loveless childhood, he found himself feeling something other than just rage. He felt a profound sense of sympathy. He could see the broken man behind the monster.
This leads to one of Capote's most powerful ideas. He uses Dewey's conflicted point of view to show us the crime as a kind of psychological accident. It was this tragic, random collision between a deeply damaged person and a totally innocent family. It could have been anyone. Now, that doesn't excuse the act, not at all, but it forces us, the readers, to confront the broken humanity of the killer.
This emotional complexity is what makes Dewey such an incredible figure. For him, the case didn't just end when the trial was over or the killers were executed. No, it left a permanent mark on his life. And that is exactly why Capote made a very specific, very deliberate choice about how to end this novel.
The investigation took a huge personal toll. I mean, the stress was so crushing that Dewey lost a lot of weight. His home phone was ringing off the hook with calls from reporters and other cops. He poured every ounce of himself into this case, and it came at a great personal cost. Now, Capote makes a brilliant choice for the book's final scene. It doesn't end with the drama of the killer's execution. Instead, it ends quietly, years later, with Alvin Dewey visiting the Clutter family's graves. He thinks about his own sons, who are now grown, and just reflects on the simple, ongoing rhythm of life in Holcomb. The story shifts from violence and death to resilience and peace.
And that's the big question, right? Why end this dark, sprawling masterpiece on such a quiet, personal note? By ending with Dewey, Capote leaves us with an incredibly powerful message. The real story, in the end, isn't about the darkness that can fall on a small town. It's about how decent people manage to endure it. Alvin Dewey stands for the restoration of order, the strength of a community, and the simple power of a moral compass in a world that can feel senseless. He is truly the heart of the story.